What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another Bros Talking Soccer podcast. My name is Dave Knittel, and today I am joined by Dan Tracey, who is a freelance writer, statistician, and podcaster for the E-Spurs and Real Football Cast podcast. Dan, hello, how you doing?
Hello. I guess it's good evening on my side, but I guess it's good afternoon over the pond, isn't it? So, how are you? You good?
I am fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
People that are joining us live on YouTube, hello, welcome. Please feel free to interact with us as we go along here. I have the chat feature up in the background. Say hello to Dan and myself. You got any questions for him as we go along here? Would love to hear them. With that, I think we're ready to jump into the podcast. Dan, any last questions? Are you ready to go?
No, just ready to get cracking, mate. So do what you need to do.
All right, let's do it. I'd like to welcome on Dan Tracey, who is a freelance writer, statistician, and podcaster for the E-Spurs and Real Football Cast podcast. Dan, welcome to Bros Talking Soccer. How you doing today?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for joining us. First off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where are you from, and which clubs do you support?
I'm from London. I support Tottenham. So I live in East London. I'm actually about 10, 15 minutes away from West Ham. So I'm in sort of enemy territory, should I say. But I'm not one of these sort of fans who has multiple clubs. I'm just Tottenham sort of through and through. That causes me enough strife and hassle. So I think one's enough, to be honest.
I believe it. So how'd you come to support Tottenham? Was there any sort of like crystal defining moment? Was it a family thing? Was it where you grew up? How'd you come to support Tottenham?
Back in, what would it have been? When I was about 6. So just after the 1990 World Cup. You don't really have sort of too much football memories back then, but I remember England obviously doing what they did, and then just having that connection of Gaza and Lineker. Then you sort of think, oh, hang on, there's club football as well. And then you see them playing for Tottenham. They won the FA Cup the following season, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I might have been a Forest fan for the last sort of 28, 29 years. So thankfully, I think I've made a decent enough choice. I think we're all right on that front.
I would agree with that. How have you felt about Tottenham's season so far? It's been a little rocky, but hey, they're still kind of right there in the title race. So how have you felt about the season?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been rocky. It's certainly been interesting. Not a dull moment. I mean, we've been making headlines sometimes for the wrong reasons. You know, if it's not signing players, it's the stadiums that's still taking age to be built. In terms of the season itself, I think we can't have too many complaints for on-pitch results. I mean, you could argue if we bought players, we might be better off, but then there's no guarantee that would happen because at the end of the day, you buy players, they've still got to fit into the ethos of a squad. So I think for where we are, it's about par, really. I mean, obviously disappointing not to get a domestic cup. Obviously going out of 2 in the space of a week has taken a bit of a dent to the pride, but at the same time, winning 2 league games straight afterwards is sort of almost erased that memory. So I think for where we are, it's fine. If we can sort of just solidify that, dare I say, sort of top 3 finish, that will do. I don't really think we're in the title race. Obviously, never say never, but I just think, you know, the fact that City and Liverpool just look a little bit better and injuries have not quite sort of decimated their squads just sort of means we're on we're sort of the third horse in a 2-horse race, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And so, like you kind of touched on that, there's so much happening with Tottenham, the stadium, Pochettino, the players, and all of that. How are you feeling about the club's both short-term and long-term future? You know, what do you think is going to happen? You know, what's your confidence level on retaining people when you think you're going to get into the stadium? How are you feeling about the club short and long-term?
I mean, obviously, not spending money is not great, but if you look at the bigger picture, you might sort of then think, do you know what, maybe the ends might just justify the means. And the fact that we are sort of still, dare I say, punching above our weight, being still in the top 4 at the moment and on the fringes of a title race, things aren't too bad. They could be a lot worse. Perhaps they could be better. I guess better is measured by winning silverware. There's always going to be that millstone around our neck until we actually do. The longer that goes on, then I guess the tougher it actually becomes to do so. So there's always that worry. But, you know, going into a new stadium, it's not going to be something that necessarily changes a player's mind and think, oh, do you know what, I might leave, but we're in a new stadium, I'm definitely going to stay. But if you have that element added to getting back into the Champions League, then I don't think players are going to necessarily be in a rush to depart either. I think, you know, everyone sort of paints this doom and gloom picture, and Sky Sports in the UK have been selling our players for 3 or 4 years, and funnily enough, none of them have left yet. So we must be doing something right. I think there's obviously a period of austerity, but, you know, we're sort of dealing with that and dealing with it well. I think a lot of that goes down to Pochettino. I think he's doing an absolutely incredible job. You know, you could almost argue if he finishes in the top 4, is that manager of the year status because of the job he's done without signing players? that's an argument for another day. But I think, getting into new stadium, we will get there eventually, will be worth this pain in the short term. And I think then that will eventually kick us onto this sort of new platform of hopefully where we really want to be. And if that then sort of allows us to make marquee signings, I'm not saying we sort of burst the bank and start spending £250 million a sort of summer or that, but if you can start evolving the squad, I don't think it's revolution, it's more evolution, but just adding in a couple more real quality names over the next couple of years, and you just never know. And hopefully it might be our time.
And I agree with that. And although I'm a Liverpool supporter, I have kind of a soft spot for Tottenham just because of the way they've gone about everything. I love that they're trying to really invest in infrastructure, really lay the foundations for something. And it's fascinating kind of seeing their evolution into this almost powerhouse that I expect them to become, and, competing at the top end of the table. So I've actually kind of liked the journey, and I hope Poch stays. I hope they retain the players and really make it sort of interesting. So I know you said you're a one club man, but I assume you support England as well. What do you think of the team's chances for the UEFA Nations Finals?
Well, I guess as good as chances any. A 1 in 4 chance. I mean, they've only got to win 2 games. What is it? Portugal, Holland, or Netherlands and Switzerland. Yeah, why not, really? I think, we've sort of shown when we want to turn it on, we can. We beat Spain in the Nations League group, or whatever you want to call it, that sort of mini league, when it really at one point looked like it was that sort of campaign was sort of petering out. And I think that was almost, dare I say, sort of a coming of age performance. Obviously, we've done excellent in the World Cup, didn't quite get over the line there, but it was sort of a case of, what do you do after that? How do you sort of keep yourself going? And it's good to see that this momentum is continuing. And I think if we can, as a nation, win the Nations League, it puts you in such a great position for the European Championships the summer after, because it's just building that sort of winning mentality. Like Tottenham, if they do ever get a domestic cup, then it might lead to bigger things the following season. So this could be a real, a real perfect building block for England and where they want to be in 2020, 2022. So I think, it'll be an interesting summer. And like I say, they've got as good a chance as anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't remember if it was Jose or Pep. One of them, I think, was so they love to push that it was really important winning a cup competition because they felt that they spurred the team on. I want to say it was Jose, but I could have it wrong. But a lot of fans or people want to write off the importance of winning cups, but I think it can really spur a team on. They get that sort of pressure out of the way. They figure out a way to win a title, and that can spur them on to greater things. So best of luck to England in that, and I'm rooting for you guys in the Euros. So let's get back to talking more a little bit about you. So I see you're working with UEFA as a freelancer to provide pre-tournament and competition data. Can you tell us what exactly that means, and maybe give an example of that?
Well, unfortunately, I don't do it anymore. But that was sort of that's fine. But I'll quite happily explain it to you. Basically, what I used to do is you have competitions, obviously Champions League, Europa League, but any other tournament in their auspices under their umbrella. And it was compiling a lot of tournament stats and then creating what is called the UEFA Champions League Technical Report, which is a big document, and it basically labels every player that's done any action in the Champions League. So any minutes have played, forward passes, like anything. So to be honest, I'll be honest with you, it's probably why I don't really work for them anymore. Is it's not very glamorous. It sounds glamorous, but it's a very laborious task of, I shouldn't moan because it's a really good job to have and put on the CV.
But it's tedious or...
Yeah, it's sort of after a while you think, there's only so much sort of, you're sort of doing 8-9 hours working with football data, and then you think, do I really want to watch football in the evening? It's almost like a busman's holiday, really. So, I mean, like I say, great opportunity, great experience. Like I say, great thing to have on the CV, and it's open doors to do other stuff, but it's just one of those sort of projects where it has a certain shelf life. I think really sort of, it's just a role that you've outgrown, really, but certainly something that I did enjoy at the time. But I think after sort of 12, 18 months, there's only so much you can do. But yeah, so it was basically just analysing anything which happens in the UEFA competition. So, if you ever get the sort of luck to do that kind of role, it's I would recommend it for a little bit. Just don't do it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, high burnout rate. So are you sitting there watching games on film and then having to rewind or like watch it almost at like half speed so you can note as you're going along? Like, how did you actually physically do it?
To be honest, someone else had that job, and my job was then to sort of then give the analysis thereafter. So I wouldn't necessarily be match tracking. When people sort of note part, they have like an Xbox controller, don't they? And they sort of like press that for a pass, and that's a forward pass. Like it was not that base level, but then someone would collect that information, and it'd be my job to say, right, give us a player, Luka Modric, for example, 323 passes in 6 Champions League group stage matches, that kind of thing. So it's then finding about those killer stats and creating like infographics and that kind of stuff. So it's all about sort of repurposing data so it can be visualized and digested by millions and millions of fans around the globe.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. And even so, you just mentioned something offhand, but it was something I didn't know, and I'm sure our listeners didn't know, but I didn't know how people quantify and like list the stats in a soccer match. I didn't know if it was on a piece of paper or if it's, like you said, if it's like an Xbox control and they actually press a button to designate what type of thing it was. So that was just sort of a fascinating thing that you just kind of threw out there that, I learned, and hopefully listeners learned as well. So thank you for that. That was really cool. So you have also an interesting mix of being a writer, statistician, and podcaster. So from each of those 3 different areas, do you have like a piece of content, either recurring or something that you did one-off that you have a favorite of? Like it could be either an interview, a specific game you wrote, or something that you do on a recurring basis. Do you have favorites?
Oh God, that's a really good question, actually. I mean, I think you sort of try and take pride in everything you do. I think the fact that I've sort of done multiple projects keeps it interesting. I think also, dare I say, because one of them doesn't pay enough, so I have to sort of try and do as many as I can. But I think, to be honest, for me, because I do a bit of sort of data analysis for day-to-day business. So I've got like 10 years experience of that. So to do that kind of work with football, and for example, when I write about statistical pieces, like I look at, sort of who has the best shot conversion rates in the Premier League, like who's the most wasteful in front of goal, all things like that. So it can be like recurring projects, things like lineups, for example. Like what I do each week, I've built a model and I track all the Premier League lineups. I literally just feed the data into Excel very quickly, and it's all automated, and then it can just tell you all the amount of Premier League changes from team to team this season. Little things like that. So I've always got these like little projects bubbling on the go, and it's trying to sort of provide data that people can sort of analyze. And I think sometimes with writing, and I think, it's not criticism on anyone, because I think we're all in the same field, but there's so much noise at times. It's like, what am I doing is going to stand out. So you have to sort of take a step away and think, not everyone necessarily can look at football from a data and sort of analytical point of view. So that's what I try and do, just try and sort of offer something different, and, not just educate myself, but, try and sort of create debate, and people go, oh, that's interesting. So if people can sort of take something away from the work I do, then I think I've sort of succeeded, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I love it. So, I mean, you touched on there, say you took away the fact that, there's other noise, other content and things like that. If you could, in a perfect world, write podcast or, do stuff with data and kind of use your statistician background, do you have a favorite of those 3 that you particularly enjoy the most? Is it the statistic stuff?
To be honest with you, I think it's podcasting, because I think it's, it's interactive. I think also why sort of spend time writing 1,000 odd words when you can get your point across, and a lot of people can sort of then, they can all sort of chip in like that, and you can have sort of backwards and forwards conversation as well, like, like we're doing now. So I think, it's also perhaps less sort of time intensive, so you can do more of it, but at the same time, you don't want to dilute what you do by just sort of pumping out content for the sake of content. So you want to try and sort of create like a quality threshold, if that makes sense. So I think what I've learned from sort of doing podcasting over the last couple of years, that, everyone seems to be sort of, they've all got their opinions. I think everyone's happy to sort of have a chat, and I think it's, getting good conversations out of those people. And I think that's probably the direction that I'm starting to enjoy more. I used to be sort of writing, but I think as you get older and evolve, you think, actually, do you know what? I think I'm sort of getting towards the podcast direction. So hopefully, I think that can sort of go further. I think there's more sort of mileage in that one.
I would agree with that, and I'm partial to that too. I've tried writing in the past. I'm just not a good writer, and it doesn't interest me as much, and I don't have nearly the knowledge base to be a statistician. I am very much partial to podcasting, and I really, really enjoy it as well. So that was cool to hear. Now you're working on, again, you're a freelancer and you do a lot of different things. I know you do data analysis and statistics for your career or whatnot, but, incorporating everything that you work on kind of in the, I'm going to call it soccer, you can call it football, whatever you want to call it, world. Has that always been like a passion of yours and something that you wanted to do as a career path? Was it something you kind of stumbled into? What was kind of the evolution of you getting involved in all these projects?
I mean, to be honest, I've only really been having a crack at this for 2-3 years. And I think I'm like 35 now. And it got to a point where I was working a full, 9 to 5, 9 to 6 week in a job that I didn't like. And I thought, do you know what? If I don't ever have a crack at this and do what I really want to do, then I'm never going to do it. And I'm, you know, not going to be like miserable for the rest of my life, but it's that what if. And I think the opportunities that people have now, like how old are you, for example, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 30.
Okay. So like, I mean, when I was like 20, we didn't really have this social media explosion. There wasn't the freedom to write at large and have your work sort of read across the world. Like we just didn't have those opportunities. So now it's become a lot more open, which is, you know, it can be a good thing and a bad thing because, like I say, it's created a lot of noise. And again, you're sort of trying to sift through a lot of that to get to the quality. And I'm not trying to big myself up here, but I've only been doing this for 2-3 years, and I'm now turned that 5-day week into like 2. So I'm getting, you know, I'm not quite where I want to be, but I think, you know, what we do in this industry as, you know, collectively, it's a marathon really. And the winners are the people that are prepared to just keep going, because a lot of people drop off and think, oh, it's not for me. I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to work for free. I'm not getting my perceived value. But I think you just have to keep going, because unfortunately, when you want to work in this football industry, because it's the most popular sport in the world, a lot of people want to do it. And I think you need to sort of just keep pushing yourself and driving yourself to get to the end game. So I'm not there now, but, you know, like I say, 2-3 years ago, I wasn't doing anything. So it's that passion that I always wish I could have done. And I just thought, you know what, I just got to do it. And if I crash and burn, then at least I had a crack. And it's probably the best decision I've ever made. And hopefully things will keep going. But I'm content where I am now. But I think at the same time, there's always that sort of thing, that fire inside you that keeps you sort of wanting to do more. So if it means creating more content or doing more podcasts, and hopefully, you know, the exposure and the platform will get bigger.
Absolutely. Very well said. And I couldn't agree more. So, you know, it's awesome. It's awesome hearing that. And I kind of have a similar story with, you know, my journey as well. It was something that I didn't want to look back on when I was 40 or 50, you know, back on everything and say, hey, what could have been? So I can completely relate to what you're going through and the decisions that you've made. So it's awesome to hear other people kind of doing the same things. Let's talk about the 2 podcasts you're involved in, at least that I know of. You might be involved in more, but E-Spurs and Real Football Cast. So how long have you been doing each of them, and what are they about?
The E-Spurs podcast I've been doing since last October, I believe. It all blended into one. Yeah, that sounds about right. Last season, let's say. And basically, it's just a Tottenham-centric podcast. So all we talk about is Tottenham for 60 minutes every Monday. Goes out on a sort of Tuesday, and that's it. So we sort of look predominantly on what's happened, because you can't really sort of predict the future. We can have a bit of a sort of preview chat, but really it's sort of digesting the Tottenham game from the weekend before. It's me, sort of 2 sort of co-hosts, and then we get sort of a rotation of a third guest. Try and sort of don't overpopulate with guests, because otherwise you don't really get enough of sort of an insight of who you sort of book to work with. But yeah, it's a good laugh. I think we've got a good sort of constant audience that, you know, like what we do. So again, it's all about sort of pushing it and keeping it going. And yeah, a lot of fun. Sometimes the episodes that when we don't win are better, because I think it feels cathartic. You can get more off your chest, because defeat always creates debate. Really, it's all very well sort of just you know, chatting about a win and saying, oh, how great we are, but it doesn't really make for good podcast, I find, because you just sort of patting yourself on the back and going, aren't we great? So that's the sort of Tottenham podcast in a nutshell. Literally just Tottenham. Real Football Cast. Sorry, I should add, the E-Spurs podcast is not something that I own. It's basically I was approached to host it, so I'm sort of working on behalf of someone. The Real Football Cast is my creation, because it's not admittedly the most exciting name, but because I have websites, Real Football Man. That's basically the genesis of all of this. That started, you know, like I say, 2-3 years ago. And it's just a natural progression, because I've got Real Football Data, which is the statistics. So I guess it's like a real football brand of such. I'm not the most sort of best at marketing, but it's the continuation, the evolution of that. So it's a Real Football Cast, and that literally is just anything that's happened in the past 7 days. So, you know, all Premier League sort of reviews. We try and sort of cover as many teams as possible, but if there's like a 0-0, it's not getting chatted about at all. It's in the bin. And then basically just anything, like any big headlines of the week. Website's realfootballcast.com, so feel free to check that out. There's an episode that went live yesterday. Again, like I say, just sort of cutting through everything that's happened in the last sort of few days. Me, and sometimes but actually there are guests most of the time. Sometimes I have to run the channels on my own and talk to myself for an hour, which is it was a bit weird at first, but then you sort of settle into it and think, actually, it's all right. So whether people want to listen to my voice unbroken for 60 minutes, I don't know. Some people do. Thanks for doing so, but it is better when we have guests. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
I would agree. I would agree with that. You touched on a couple of things there. The one thing I want to circle back to, I was reading an article recently, and I wish I could cite it properly, but it was basically saying like Olympic gold medalists versus Olympic failures and media coverage, and it's just like exponentially higher for failures than it is for successes. And so, just touching on what you were talking about with after a Tottenham defeat, I don't know if it's human nature or what. It's just, I think, easier to sort of maybe just be negative and whatnot. And so that's just something that just sort of happens in society. So that was just an interesting sort of thing that I had just read. Now, the E-Spurs name, I don't know how much you know about it. I just wanted to clarify because, esports is really, blowing up, and the, video games and all of that. It doesn't have anything to do with video games or anything like that, right? Do you know why the name was E-Spurs?
Do you know what? I don't think there's a real connection with esports. I think it's literally just some sort of internet sort of connected name, really. I can't really offer any more explanation. I wish I had something a bit more interesting, but I think something along those lines, basically. It's something to do with online activity and Tottenham. So I think that's the sort of natural fusing of the two together. Okay,
cool. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for people. And we actually do have a ton of Spurs listeners. I don't want to say a ton. I want to oversell here, but we have a decent amount of Spurs listeners to this podcast. So if you're not already listening, make sure to check out the E-Spurs podcast. So I have listened to a couple different episodes of both the E-Spurs as well as the Real Football Cast, and I've been really impressed with your hosting, abilities. And so I know you said you've only been doing it about 2 or 3 years, but did you have any sort of prior experience? Does all this just come naturally to you? I think you do a fantastic job of just keeping the conversation flowing. And I just wanted to shout you out and just ask you kind of how you've developed that.
Well, it's very kind of you. I do appreciate your feedback there. And to be honest, no, it's not something that I've had sort of long-term practice by just the time I've been doing it. I don't know. I've just obviously, I think really, if you listen to the first ever episodes, you probably wouldn't have been so glowing with the feedback. So I think, again, it just sort of evolves in time. But I feel I've certainly got better in myself. Like I say, I'm trying to sort of just keep a natural flow going, just sort of set a tempo that hopefully doesn't allow the listener to get sort of too bogged down and think, oh, what's he going on about? It's not sort of breakneck speed or anything, but I think, it's sort of just trying to foster good conversation. And I basically just act as the conduit and sort of just keep bouncing off people and, letting the guests do their job. So obviously you need good guests as well because they make my job easier. But obviously I guess you do need to be a good host at some point, otherwise it all falls apart.
Do you listen to other podcasts? I feel like I listen to a lot of other podcasts and I just try to pick up stuff that other people are doing. Like, does it come from that at all, or no? Is it more just your own sort of practice?
To be honest, it's just me because I think
nice.
You can listen to other podcasts, but when you start trying to imitate other people's style, you need to really sort of find your own groove, and whether that takes 6 years or 6 months, I think you need to be you. So it's no good going, oh yeah, this is that podcast, he's doing that. Obviously you can see why people are successful with podcasts, but I think if you really want to sort of carve out something for yourself, it's about you just be you and don't worry about what other people are doing. If you're not getting 1,000 listening figures this week, do you know what I mean? Like, things will come, and if people like it, then they'll tell other people. And it's like I say, you just got to play the long game. Like, I'd be kidding myself if I thought any podcast I do is going to be an overnight success. Unfortunately, like I say, we go back to, writing, there's lots of noise. With podcasts, there literally is loads of noise. It's just another sort of oversaturated niche. So you just have to like I say, find your own identity, and hopefully people then buy into that for what you do.
Absolutely. I know with the Real Football Cast, you have a partnership with Loser Pool, which is an interesting sort of I'll let you kind of describe the company, but how did your relationship kind of come about?
It came about September. So I started the Real Football Cast in August, obviously in sync with the start of this season. Didn't really have a sort of sponsorship in mind. Just I thought, I just want to do it again. Sort of just want to do something for me again, like the sort of the what if question. I was like, let's just do it. So I got about 3 or 4 episodes in, and I got a sort of a bit of a mystery email. It was almost sort of dismissed really because it was late at night on a Sunday, about 11 o'clock my time. And I was like, oh, who's emailing me now? And I sort of nearly sort of put it straight in the bin. Had a decent conversation, and someone approached me and said, oh, I'm starting this company called Loser Pool. And I was like, oh, okay. I had this sort of conversation. And basically what it is, it's like last man standing. So I don't know if you have it over there in terms of sort of like basketball or hockey, that kind of sort of element where you have some sort of tournament.
Yeah, we call it a suicide pool.
That's it. Yes. So I don't think we get away with that name. So that idea, but with football. So something that, as far as I'm concerned, has not ever been utilised or set up in the UK. Not in a sort of actual pure website sort of version. I know people might do it in sort of like private forums and such, but this is an actual proper crack at, you know, live sort of betting as such. So it's betting turns in its head, really. You're not going for the winner and odds. It's like, say, you buy into a pool, you pay, say, £2 a week. I think, yeah, that's the sort of stake money. And then you pick who you think is going to lose that week. But if they do lose, you go through to the next week. So if you pick Huddersfield and they lose, then you go through to next week, but you can't have Huddersfield again. So you have to sort of think holistically and have a look at a wider approach and think, right, what's going to happen over the next, say, 3 to 4 weeks? It's not just going, that's my guaranteed loser and picking them, you know, 4 times in a row. You have to sort of think of the bigger picture. So it's an interesting game. It's, you know, it's still new, like everything I'm doing. So we're sort of working hand in hand. I'm also doing a bit of sort of marketing work in the background for them, trying to sort of push that. So, you know, hopefully that can sort of pick up speed. And I think the bigger that gets, then hopefully the bigger my podcast gets as well.
Absolutely. So I just did a quick Google. So I'm not involved in the pools. So Suicide Pool may have been the name back in the day. Now it's called a Survivor Pool.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of a fairer name.
Yes, exactly. So I wanted to just get that out there and just, you know, my ignorance, you know, just clarify that for you. So apologies there. You touched on the Real Football Man, which is the website I think you created. So I was poking around on there, and it's really cool to see. What's been the evolution of that website? Has it always had the same content, or have you grown different pieces, different recurring, you know, sections and all of that, or has it always kind of been the vision from the start what it is today?
I mean, to be honest, it's sort of, dare I say, dwindling down, because the way I started it and the way I looked at it is, I'm never going to be able to compete with the likes of BBC or Sky Sports. I can't, as a man myself, just one person, have the world's biggest football website. It's just not going to happen. But what I can do is create a vehicle for myself to create content, to wave under the people who are hiring and actually going to be prepared to pay people and say, right, I built this, I can do this. So when I was in its full swing, I was getting, you know, just as me, I was getting something in the region of about 20,000 hits a month. And I was honestly like, every day of the week, just writing and writing. It'd be like any Premier League match, like, you know, if there's 380 Premier League matches, there'd be a match preview for everyone, 500 words. So that's like 5,000 words a week, times that by 38. That's like, you know, what, 190,000 words per season just on that. And then there's opinion pieces. I was really, really going for it because I thought, you know, if I want to make this work, I've got to really work hard. Because like I said earlier that if I had this opportunity 15 years ago, I could have had a 15-year start, but I don't. You know, there's a lot of hungry young people want to do this. I was like, right, I need to be hungrier. And I was really. So because of that, it's allowed me to sort of pick up actual paid work for websites. So because of that, I don't really have the time to sort of commit to keep feeding content into Real Football Man, which, to be honest, is a bit of a shame, really, because, you know, something that I've built up from the ground, it's sad to sort of almost, it's gathering dust, but there's no reason why, if things sort of align, that I can't just produce more content. Maybe I'm being a little bit lazy and I need to actually get back into that and start working for me again to a certain degree. There's no reason why I can't. So, like I say, it's collecting dust, but it's for a good reason, because it's not just me working, trying to build my own website. It's me now working for other people and actually getting paid for the work I do, which is really the end result, what I wanted.
Absolutely. So do you want to talk about any of those other projects? Because I know we focused on, you know, the podcasts and that one website. Is there anything else that I haven't asked about, like as far as projects are concerned, that you'd be excited to share?
I am just about, what I did in January. I don't know if you ever read the BBC Sport Gossip column, which is basically an aggregator of every back page transfer rumour in January, or every day, but January is obviously, that's when transfers are actually going to happen. So what I did, because I've got so much time on my hands, I've got such a riveting social life, is that I listed every rumour in January. And what I'm now going to do this week is see how many of them actually were true. So what papers were actually telling fibs, who are the worst culprits, who are the players that were most linked in January, what deals actually come through, and try and give you like an overall analysis piece, hit rates, that kind of thing. So that's my next project, but I've always got ideas on the go. I've got something called, it's called Head-to-Head Stats on Twitter. It's gone a little bit quiet over the last couple of weeks, but what this is, it's all 8 major European leagues. So that is England, Spain, Germany, Italy, France, Portugal, Holland, and the Championship in England. And it's an automated Excel model where I scrape the data of the league tables, and it can tell you things like the points that have been won in the last 6 matches in like a neat infograph. So it has like a display in the front, and it's all sort of different leagues, different colours and all that. And it's like points won over the last 6 matches, average goals per game, average goals conceded, pass completion, shot conversions, what else? Like all these sort of like main headline stats, and that can be used from a sort of informed betting choice, because you think, oh, actually, Burnley 0.89 goals on average, blah, blah, blah. They'll probably score less than 2.5 against Brighton. So it's then sort of trying to add knowledge to that, so people can go and use that, and maybe hopefully get that in front of websites that go, actually, yeah, maybe we can use that for ourselves. So there's always loads of little things that are ticking, bubbling under the surface. It's basically have I got enough time to complete them all? So there's always, I'm a bit of a mad scientist when it comes to football and data. There's always another idea in the background.
I love it. I love it. Make sure to, so both those sound interesting. Make sure to share them with us. We'll share them with all the listeners, but I'm really interested in that gossip column, rumor grading or whatever you want to call it. Do you have the rumors? Like, I'm curious to know just how many rumors there were in your database. I don't know if you have that off the top of your head. If not, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'll give you a rough figure. Just 500 or so, maybe a little bit, a little bit less, a little bit more. So it was a daily pursuit for January, about 15 minutes per day. But it's worked out well. So this will be the fun part. It was a bit laborious trying to log all these player rumours. I think Gonzalo Higuain was in about 15 times. So we know that one's complete. But even from memory, a lot of them just didn't happen. So it just goes to show. I think it'd be interesting to see what the final percentage is. But even my initial findings are, don't trust the newspapers, because a lot of it is rubbish.
I love it. I love it. I'm excited to see the final product of that. Now, is there anything else that we didn't talk about across anything before I ask my final question?
No, to be honest with you, mate, I think that's about it. I think, we've covered everything in detail. I've not got too much else on the go. I always feel busy, but, I think there's always room to do more. So I think, having this chat probably inspired me to sort of, like I say, go back to working on the website. So yeah, there'll probably be more things developing in the pipeline. I think for me, it's just keep pushing on and just trying to sort of find new opportunities and just see what, the next sort of few months and, dare I say, even years takes me.
Awesome. So we asked this last question of all our interview guests. What's the thing you're most excited about happening in your soccer world right now? You can take it any direction you want. What's the thing you're most excited about?
I just want Tottenham to come home. Really, I do. That's it. It's a bit simplistic, but I've got a season to get at Tottenham, but I've not been since October. Now, whether that makes me a real fan, I don't know, but I'm just sick of going to Wembley, and I'm not the only one. So, obviously, you can see Tottenham's attendances have dwindled dramatically over the last sort of few months, and I think people just sort of had enough. And I think the way sort of Tottenham have dealt with it could have been better. I think it's the case of this sort of news being drip-fed. People saying technically it's fraud, which, you could never legally prove, but how much did Tottenham know about really this stadium actually not being open when season tickets were being sold? That's a debate for another night. But yeah, I think, not only just from a personal sort of point of view, because I live much closer to the new stadium than I do Wembley, so it'd be easier to get there. But I just think it's almost one of the, if not the missing piece of the jigsaw. We talked about Tottenham building blocks, and if they win trophies, they get even bigger. But I think stadiums are going to play such a massive part in that. I don't know if we'll get there this season. Not maybe because it's completed, but I think competition integrity might dictate that. Say if we are in the title race, with 4 or 5 games to go, would it be fair to then go, okay, you can go back to your actual new home now? I think, Liverpool, Man City would be up in arms in that. And also it could have a knock-on effect, say, if they're playing teams in the relegation zone. So I think really Tottenham fans have probably quietly sort of admitted to themselves, it's not going to be there till August when we move back, but it's going to be worth the wait. And that is my sort of central dream theme of football or soccer at the moment.
That is absolutely something to be excited about. And I got to say, I do have a bit of sympathy for you in this country, because soccer is still building out a ton of infrastructure. It feels like almost once a year, a club comes into the league. They're supposed to have a new stadium and it's not ready by the time the season starts. And then they're scrambling, trying to find fields, openings are delayed and all of that. So, it's disappointing, I'm sure, as a fan, and I'm excited for you guys to get into that stadium. So thank you so much for being here. We have Dan's Twitter account, the E-Spurs Twitter, as well as the Real Football Man website linked in the video description and podcast show notes. But Dan, can you tell people where to find you? And if you have anywhere else, definitely feel free to send them to me and I will add them to the links as well.
To be honest, for now, the main place I'd want you to find me is therealfootballcast.com. So
Okay.
I think everything else is sort of bubbling under nicely, taking care of itself. But it'd be great if I could get a few more ears on the Real Football Cast website. So yeah, check that out. There's links for any kind of platform. That's the main place to find them. So yeah, realfootballcast.com. Have a hunt at that and let me know what you think if you do listen to it.
Absolutely. Make sure to subscribe, like, do all of that stuff, and visit Real Football Cast. Dan, thanks so much for being here.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
All right, cool. Listeners, thank you for joining. Anyone that happens to check out this YouTube video, thank you for being here. And Christian, Matt, and I will be back with another episode on Sunday. And Dan, have a great day.
Thanks, mate. You too.